Absolutely.
Nice to have you. Start.
Santa good.
Yes.
Do you need an agenda?
I got an agenda.
But do you have two agendas?
So should I call it to order and then hand it over to Centrise for the roll call and then? Yeah, I guess, yeah, that sounds. Or should I start Pledge of Allegiance and then I punt? Okay. Are you good back there? All right. With the hour of 7 o'clock, I'll call to order the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors organizational meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now I'll hand things over to the township manager to take a roll call and give some instructions.
Thank you, Supervisor Thompson, and thank you to members of the board, staff, and the public for joining us this evening for the January 2nd Board of Supervisors reorganizational meeting. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you are attending virtually using the Zoom platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chair calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on an agenda item, please address the board at the podium and state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have just a few short items to cover. First, members of the public attending using the Zoom platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, Board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. And finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Heller?
Here.
Mr. Thompson, or excuse me, Mr. Patterson.
Here.
There is a quorum. Thank you.
All right, we do have a quorum, and I believe, hand it over to Lisa.
Thank you. Up next is the seating of the board, and all four incoming and returning members of the board were sworn in prior to this meeting. Congratulations. Very excited, and I'm truly sorry I couldn't be there this evening. I'm under the weather, and so I'll be running this meeting, and then we'll turn the regular meeting over to the vice chair at that point. So again, my apologies. Very sorry about this, but we will make it work here. So moving on, we will go to the election of officers, and I'll hand it over to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Supervisors will need to designate the Township Manager to act as the temporary chair in order to conduct the nominations and election of the chair for the board for 2024. A motion will be required to nominate the Township Manager as temporary chair. Once appointed temporary chair, the manager will seek nominations for chair of the Board of Supervisors. Once the chair has been elected, he or she will be responsible for conducting the remainder of the nominations and elections of the vice chair and the secretary treasurer for the township. The manager has historically been appointed as the secretary treasurer.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Centrise Martin, Township Manager, as temporary chair of the Board of Supervisors.
This is Omari, second that motion.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you, and we'll hand it over to the manager.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to nominate the chair of the Board of Supervisors for 2024.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors add Lisa Strickland as chair of the Board of Supervisors for 2024.
This is Matt, I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you. That is a unanimous vote. Madam Chair, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. And again, just looking forward to this year, and my apologies again that we're doing it this way, but you know, we've learned that we're adaptable and committed. So I guess this is just a reflection of that. So thank you again. And we'll move now to take nominations for vice chair.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors elect Jeremy Thompson as vice chair of the Board of Supervisors for 2024.
This is Matt, I will second.
I accept the nomination.
Great. If there's no other nominations, we can take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Yay.
We'll move next to Secretary and Treasurer. Is there a motion, would someone care to make a motion that's in the agenda?
Sure. This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Centrise Martin as Secretary Treasurer.
Is there a second?
This is Omari, second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say no. Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move to annual appointments, and we'll go back to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The term expiration date for all of the positions listed is December 31st, 2023, in the narrative provided in the reorganizational agenda packet. These positions are annual appointments that need to be made by the Board of Supervisors, provided are the individual appointees as stated by the manager's recommendation. So you can, as a board, appoint them individually, or you can appoint all of them as one slate, and a recommended motion is provided with the agenda.
Thank you. So as you can see, recommended motion 1 is to appoint individually. Recommended motion 2 would be to appoint the slate as presented. Would anyone care to make a motion?
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors appoint those individuals or agencies as recommended by the Township Manager as annual appointments for the year 2024.
And is there a second?
I, Mr. Thompson, will second that.
Okay, any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say no. Thank you. And now we'll move to appointments to authorities, boards, and commissions. First up is authorities, boards, and commission appointments, and we'll go back to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda and the agenda packet is a list of the incumbents and recommended as indicated by the board in the special meetings following interviews per the ABC policy. Provided with the agenda is a recommended motion for the board's consideration.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint the slate of applicants to the authorities, boards, and commissions as described in the agenda.
I, Mr. Thompson, will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? And if not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say no. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to appointments to the Center Region Council of Governments and regional committees, and go back to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the organizational meeting agenda packet is a copy of the Center Region Council of Government Committee Appointments Memo, as well as a recommended motion for the board to consider appointing the appointees as a slate of officials as presented in the agenda to the COG and regional committees for the year 2024.
Great, thank you. So we have a little bit of finalizing to do on here. We kind of did our best to estimate where we would land here. So we could just start at the top, and then once we've incorporated all the changes, we can take a motion to approve the slate. So executive is on there, and anybody can feel free to speak up if there is any interest in discussing any of these, but I'll move to the ones that were pretty much undecided at this point. So public safety, and we had for that one and the climate action and sustainability, given the other assumed assignments, we were looking at either Mr. Heller or Mr. Patterson to fill one of those and the other, so I'll look to you both to see your preferences.
Madam Chair, we just made a deal. I'll take public safety. And
Okay,
Oh, you'll take that.
yeah,
Yes, that's good.
we didn't make a deal, we just did it.
Yeah.
okay. So I have Mr. Patterson on public safety, and then Mr. Heller on climate action and sustainability.
That sounds good.
Great. Okay, and then we'll look to alternates. So first up, we'll do alternate to public safety.
I'm happy to take that.
Great. I'm trying to note everything, but I know we'll have this all included in all the minutes. And then we'll look to human resources for an alternate there.
I'm happy to be the alternate there as well. This is Patty.
And let's see, I don't want you having to fill it, okay, there's others coming up. So the Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee, is anyone interested in serving as the alternate for that?
This is Mario. Will.
Great. And then CCMPO, is anyone interested in that alternate position?
I would be interested in that, Madam Chair.
Great. Okay, we'll go to Parks Capital alternate. I'd be interested in that, so I haven't been on that before. And facilities alternate. I'm happy to do that too if nobody else is interested in that.
I'm happy to go ahead and continue doing that to support Omari and everyone, yeah.
Great. Okay, we have that. And then climate action and sustainability.
I'll back up Mr. Heller there. This is Mario.
Okay. And then parks governance ad hoc. I'm happy to take that one too.
Perfect.
Those two seem to kind of go together. There's a lot of shared meeting information in those. And then, let's see, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that could be it.
I'm seeing Spring Creek Watershed Commission, the primary isn't stated.
Oh, you're correct, thank you. So that had been, I think I had done it for a bit, but probably just barely, and that's why my name is there. But I know that Mr. Gracie Griffin had also filled in on that role. And I'm happy to continue with that, or if anybody else is interested, I'll continue with that, that's fine. That's not a frequent meeting either, so, and if there's a conflict there, Mr. Abbey's very involved with that, so we do rely heavily on him for those meetings. Okay, anything else? Nobody's seen anything else?
No.
Okay, if not, we can go ahead and take a motion.
Yeah, that one I think just has a.
And that would be to appoint the slate with the changes noted.
That's budgeted.
Oh,
Got a
yeah.
question in the room from Mr. Moderator.
Does Ron Seibert need to be appointed to the technical committee, or is that not necessary?
That's a good question. I'm not sure of his term, and if they even do terms like that, to tell you the truth, because we talked a lot about the coordinating committee terms.
Okay, well, he's willing to serve, so however that works out.
Okay, we could make that change here as well and just put him there. And note that in the fully corrected version. I think that would be good. We don't want to lose him on that technical committee.
All right, this is Patty then. I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint the slate of officials as presented and discussed in the agenda for COG and regional committees for the year 2024.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Mario. I second that motion.
All right, any other discussion on this?
Just looking at the CRPR, Mr. Gracie Griffin is listed there. I wasn't sure if there was anything that we needed to clarify for that position.
On the Parks Authority?
Right, Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority, second from the bottom.
Yeah. I
So
don't
he's gonna
think
serve.
so. Was there something?
He's going to serve. I didn't know.
Right, he's serving, since he's stepped off the board, that's the position that he was appointed to in the, for the, I'm sorry, the ABCs, so, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool, confirming that, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Any other discussion? All right, if there's none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you, everyone, and thanks for your time and serving on all those committees. It's very important, and we appreciate it. So we'll move to the appointment to the Police Pension Advisory Board, and we'll go to the manager.
Thank you. Madam Chair, provided with the agenda is a brief narrative. The Police Pension Advisory Board is made up of 4 members, 2 pension members, a member of the Board of Supervisors, and the Township Manager. The Advisory Board meets on average 4 times a year on a quarterly basis to review the performance of the pension plan, add or remove investment managers of the pension assets, and keep the plan within the investment policy established by the pension trustees, which are comprised of former board members appointed to the Police Pension Advisory Board, which included Tiara Williams and Jeremy Thompson in 2023. So this evening, the board is asked to discuss who they would like to appoint to the Police Pension Advisory Committee.
Great, thank you. So I'll go to Mr. Thompson first and see if you were interested in continuing on that, or if you wanted to not continue on that.
I'll continue on the,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well then, would someone care to make the motion?
Yep, this is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors appoint Jeremy Thompson as the Board of Supervisors representative on the Police Pension Advisory Board.
And is there a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. And we'll go to the designation of depository, and back to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Annually, the board appoints a bank to serve as the primary depository. The township continues to use Jersey Shore Bank as the primary depository, and as well as the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust, also known as Pliget, for investments, and any Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation insured bank. Provided with the agenda is a memo outlining the banks that the township uses, and this evening the board is asked to appoint Jersey Shore Bank as the primary depository bank, and provided with the agenda is a recommended motion.
Great, thank you. Would anyone care to make a motion?
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Jersey Shore State Bank as the township's primary depository, PLGIT, and any FDIC insured bank per the township's investment policy.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. So we'll move to the voting delegate and alternate for the 2024 PML Municipal Leadership Summit, and back to the manager.
This evening, the board will need to appoint a board member to serve as the voting delegate, as well as a voting delegate alternate to represent Ferguson Township at the 2024 Pennsylvania Municipal League Municipal Leadership Summit. So that will be held in Scranton, Pennsylvania this year, and the dates for the Municipal Leadership Summit are October 10th through the 13th. Additional information on the 2024 Municipal Leadership Summit will be available and provided by staff in the near future.
Great, thank you. This year I served as the voting delegate, and Jeremy was the alternate. I'm happy to do that again. I'd ask Jeremy if he's interested in doing that again.
Yep, I'd be interested in doing that again.
Great, I know we're both planning to attend, so and I encourage everyone to. They're really good conferences. We always end up learning a lot. And having the dates so far in advance is also really helpful. Okay, so I guess if anyone is interested in making that motion.
This is Amari. I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Lisa Strickland to serve as the voting delegate and Jeremy Thompson to serve as the voting delegate alternate for the 2024 PML Municipal Leadership Summit.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. So now we'll move to the approval and authorization for chair and vice chair to sign the manager agreement, and we'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As noted in the agenda, at an executive session, the board discussed extending the residency requirement to the December 31st, 2027. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the township manager employment contract, and the board is asked to consider taking action to formally approve it at this meeting this evening. Provided with the agenda is a consideration for you to take action, for the board to take action.
Thank you. Would anyone care to make that motion?
I, Mr. Thompson, will move that the Board of Supervisors grant authorization for the chair to execute the township manager employment agreement.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions on this? And seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. And we'll move to establishing the meeting dates for 2024, and we will go back to the manager.
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a narrative. Essentially, the board is tentatively scheduled to hold regular meetings at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except December, when the board meets on the first two Tuesdays because of the holiday season. Additionally, if the regular meeting date were to fall on a holiday, the board typically will hold its meeting on the day before or following the holiday. Provided within the agenda packet is a proposed regular meeting schedule, as well as a proposed special meeting schedule for the board's consideration to formally adopt, and that will allow staff to begin actually scheduling all of the meetings for 2024. You may notice that provided within the agenda packet, there is reference to special meetings for continuation for the schedule to be held on the second Wednesday at 12:15 for each month. I want to note that we are calling them now special meetings as opposed to a work session, understanding that in work sessions there's some conversation about what is what a board is able to deliberate on versus what they are not able to deliberate on. So in special meetings, one of the distinguished differences between a special meeting and a work session is that at a special meeting the board can take action and can deliberate. So we went ahead and converted all of the the formerly known and referred to as a work session to special meetings to allow the board to appropriately deliberate. So provided this evening with the agenda is a recommended motion for the board's consideration.
Thank you. Okay, and I was just going to point as well to the draft ABC presentation report that was included, just for your information, and just to note that we had discussed during the work plan discussions trying to implement some reporting from our own township ABCs back to the board, and so I think that would be a good discussion to have this year about getting a planning commission report, a small area plan report incorporated. And so we'll look forward to that discussion, hopefully pretty soon this year. And if there's nothing else on that, I'll ask if there were any comments or issues with any of those items. And if not, I'll ask for a motion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors approve the Board of Supervisors regular meeting and special meeting schedule as prepared in the attachment.
Zamari, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. And we'll move now to public hearings. First up is a public hearing on a resolution establishing the agenda order of business for 2024. And we'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda is a resolution adopting the agenda order of business for 2024. This resolution is presented in compliance with the administrative code. The proposed agenda closely follows the agenda set forth in Robert's Rules of Order. Also provided with the agenda is a recommended motion for the board's consideration.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for any comment on this item. And I'll ask the vice chair to let me know if there is anybody in the room with public comment.
Seeing none in the room for public comment, I'll hand it back over to Lisa.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anything online, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors move to adopt the resolution establishing the agenda order of business for 2024.
This is Matt. I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, and this will be a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is roll call vote for Resolution 2024-01. Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. And we'll move to the final item. That is a public hearing on a resolution adopting the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors procedures. And we'll go to the manager.
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a resolution adopting the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors procedures. The procedural manual has not changed from the 2022 version. Provided with the agenda is a recommended motion for the board's consideration.
Thank you. And again, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. I'm not seeing any online.
Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any in the room.
Thank you. Seeing no public comment, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors move to adopt the resolution adopting the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors Procedures Manual.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Thank you. And this is a roll call vote.
Roll call vote for Resolution 2024-02. Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you. And that wraps up our organizational meeting business, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
This is Patty. So moved.
And I'll second, and the organizational meeting is adjourned. I thank you all for your patience, and I will turn this regular meeting now over to the vice chair to facilitate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will call to order the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors regular meeting to order. We have already done the Pledge of Allegiance in our reorganizational meeting. As an announcement, the Board of Supervisors held an executive session on December 13th, 2024 involving a matter of personnel. Item number 4 is public input. We will take any public input for items that are not on the agenda. Those online, feel free to raise your hand or give us a little shout out and let us know your name and municipality of residence. And we'll take your public comment. Same for in the room. I don't see any in the room, not seeing any online. We'll move on to item number 5. We have approval of the minutes from December 12th, 2023's regular meeting, and then the ABC interview meetings that were conducted on December 4th, 2023, as well as December 6th, 2023. Do we have any corrections? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to either approve all those collectively or individually.
This is Patty. I move to approve the minutes that are listed in the agenda.
And do we have a second?
This is Matt. I'll second.
All right, we had a motion by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Heller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously. Authorities, boards, and commissions reports. We do have attached in the agenda the CATA report from 2023. anyone had any questions or if Mr. Patterson had anything to add, definitely thank him for serving us as the CATA rep. You know, he sits here with us as our newest supervisor. All right. Nobody has anything further to add. We will move on then to special reports and acknowledgements, starting with our diversity, equity, and inclusion activities and acknowledgements. We had New Year's Day just yesterday. Martin Luther King Day will be on January 15th. Seeing nothing for township and fiscal responsibility, as well as community and economic development and environment, we will move on to our COG and regional committee reports. Starting with the COG committee reports, we have Finance Committee, and I believe that is Ms. Strickland.
Thanks. Just a very brief report on that. We again reviewed the same list of work tasks that we had discussed before as follow-ups to the budget cycle. One item that was discussed was moving toward a revenue-based budget, and I expect that to come up at an early meeting this year. So hopefully those discussions progress. And just the executive committee basically talked about what had been done in the finance committee and then canceled the general forum meeting for last month.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Strickland? Seeing none, we had executive committee, and I believe that was also Ms. Strickland.
Yeah, that was really the total of it. Was just a discussion of finance, their discussion on those work task items. We canceled the meeting.
All right. Thank you. And if nobody has anything else, it appears the Parks and Recreation Governance, as well as Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority meetings were canceled. No other committee reports. We'll move over to staff reports, starting with the Township Manager's report. Madam Manager.
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the manager's report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anything for the manager? Seeing none, we will move on to the Public Works Director's report.
Included within the packet is my report. I do want to point out one item, which is the very first item. And just to refresh the board's memory and maybe those that aren't aware, we are participating in the township is in a regional solar power purchase agreement. So I have some bullet points there for you. I have a fact sheet included. Near the end of the bullets, I'm noting that I anticipate there would be an action item for the board to approve the contracts at a regular meeting in March. So there's a working group that's meeting rather ad hoc. There's a project management team. A location for the solar farm's been selected, and the contract and the process are fairly well along. There is a solicitor that was appointed and paid for by all of the 12 or 13 participants that are involved in reviewing the documents. And I just want to point that out to you. So if you have any questions, you can bring them up to myself or the manager, and we can try to help answer those. Also, Pam Adams with Center Region, who is on this project management team, has offered to come to a meeting, provide a presentation. I think they're going to work on a video. So lots of different ways to try to get elected officials educated on the project. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Excuse me.
What was that?
I was clearing my throat. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Any questions for the Public Works Director? No? All right.
Can you just refresh me? What was the percentage that we sort of had ballpark
Sure.
agreed to?
So we, the board, agreed to the amount of 90% of our electric consumption. So we looked at the consumption 2 years ago, and then I recently looked at our consumption again over the last year period, It's very similar. So the 90% number comes out to be somewhere around 550,000 kilowatt hours per year. The total system is a 22 megawatt system, but don't confuse that with how much it generates, because there's a large factor to multiply to get how many megawatts per hour the system generates. But we're a fraction, maybe 1 to 5%, I believe, of the total. State College Borough being the largest. But 90% is the short answer.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Seeing none, unfinished business is empty, so that moves us into new business, starting with our consent agenda. There are 2 items. Does anyone want to pull any of those 2 items? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
This is Patty. I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Do we have a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
All right, had a motion by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Heller. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, that passes. Next up, we have a discussion on the CNET proposal to add closed captioning services. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Vice Chair Thompson. So the Americans with Disabilities Act ensures that proper auxiliary aids and services are provided to those with hearing disabilities at public meetings. And for consideration by the Board of Supervisors is a proposal from CNET to add closed caption services for the regular meetings of the Board of Supervisors and for Planning Commission meetings as an option. I would suggest that the board begin having some conversations, and there's further information provided in the narrative for the board to consider. A decision could be made this evening, but is not required. It could just be the beginning of a conversation. So I just want to ensure that as you deliberate and give some consideration to what we might want to do, it is ultimately your decision to explore what we might want to do to provide ADA accessible meetings for Ferguson Township constituents. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. So yeah, we'll open up the floor for discussion. It looks like Mr. Patterson might have something. Otherwise, anyone else on the board have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. So this is just an additional add-on to what we already receive. And it is, what I'm reading is, it's actually another human that's gonna kind of put the right words to the extent there's something that's a little foggy. And so, I guess, do we have anybody that's complained and that's why we're doing this?
Ferguson Township staff has not received any complaints
Okay.
directly on this item. One of our neighboring municipalities have received feedback and from their constituents, and it has become a larger conversation among the Center Region municipalities about what, if any, additional accommodations should the municipalities be considering. The board may, it's my understanding that other neighboring municipalities have requested a legal opinion from their solicitors prior to taking any action. It's my understanding that some municipalities certainly are executing this as an option to give consideration to what's happening within this, with one of our neighboring municipalities in the Center Region. So, while others are considering an interpreter to be present at the meeting. So there's a wide range of options that the board can consider. Those 3 are certainly well within your purview to consider and deliberate on. I wanted to be able to provide the proposal from CNET to begin, as part of a reference to aid in your conversation, but it's certainly not the only action that could be taken. And we do, as part of our services from CNET, receive YouTube streaming, and so that's more of an automated closed captioning service that is provided, whereas the proposal that we receive from CNET would be a manual closed captioning service that would be provided, which would increase our fee to CNET.
Copy that. Thank you.
I'll wait till after Lisa has her comments, but,
I was gonna say Ms. Strickland was next, and then we'll get to you.
okay.
Thanks. Just a couple of things that actually the manager pretty much touched on. One, I'd be in favor of maybe assembling some questions to ask the solicitor here at this discussion this evening, to ask the manager to forward it to the solicitor on this, and maybe even to CNET. I think, one question for sure that I would have for the solicitor would be how, what precisely does she expect will be required of us to provide at in-person live meetings? So a person who is hearing impaired live in person at a meeting, what kind of accommodations will we need to provide them? I'm not sure this service answers that, my understanding is we need to address that. So, and there probably are some different ways we can do that. So I would just want some clarification of what we're required to do, and maybe CNET can provide some different options on how we could do that after we hear back from the solicitor. And along with that, we're going to be using new meeting software here fairly soon, or this year sometime. So what can that provide as far as immediate closed captioning? Is that better? Is that more accurate than the YouTube if we were going to provide some kind of screen in person for those who need it? So just a couple of questions, but I appreciate the conversation and that we can start that discussion here, and maybe just like the manager said, get some feedback from the solicitor.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with everything that Lisa said, and then I just had a follow-up question. Do we have a TTY so if a hearing impaired person called the township, do we have TTY that they can connect in?
That is a great question, and I would have to look in for confirmation on that.
Okay. I'm not even
No.
sure. I mean, in this day and age of email, I don't know if people even still use TTY, but I just was curious. So that if somebody were to say, I'd like to come and request a service or something like that.
Yes. I will look into that and follow up with a response to the board.
Okay, thanks.
For me, again, I think this is also a really good example of just the tip of the iceberg, right? I think the end result, I don't know anybody that would disagree that we definitely want to have the closed captioning available. Now, how we go about that has to be asked. And again, I want to go ahead and reemphasize what Ms. Strickland has stated, that yes, I think a couple questions back to the solicitor, but also what else could we be doing better in the township, such as having somebody in the meeting and going ahead and conveying to those that are hearing impaired, etc. So yeah, tip of the iceberg, and looking forward to more questions and more conversation around this to provide that.
Anyone else had anything to add? Otherwise, I'd say a lot of great feedback, many of which I do concur with. Would be nice to see what our new audiovisual equipment might be able to do. Definitely support the manager, maybe consulting with the solicitor, and maybe having some more discussion with CNET. Patty had touched on the TTY, and I don't want to go too far off on this discussion, but understanding, at least from my professional experience, accessibility beyond just meetings is essential. Can they read any paper documents that they have? Can they be able to function and utilize our websites? So stuff that we definitely have to take a look at, further beyond just this, just meeting communication. So,
And If I can actually
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that too, I know, Mr. Thompson, you use some of the screen reading functionalities, etc., because you've been able to catch things in agendas,
Yeah.
lengthy agendas at times, because you're utilizing that. So I think it's a good thing for everybody to
Yeah.
have that ability. So
And that's what's nice with a lot of our technology is a lot of that, like Adobe, they do have that read function. So if you don't have time or you have a visual impairment, you're able to at least get the information. Anything else to add?
I mean, good discussion. Just don't, it sounds as if we're solving a problem that doesn't exist. Or maybe there's a problem I'm not hearing. I haven't heard it or read it, but let's not solve problems that don't exist. Just be careful with that. Just caution. Procedurally, is there any action we need to take at this point? We're just gonna kind of
I think
ask those
just
questions.
Table
as soon
this
as they're-
discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a motion in the agenda, but we can definitely table it, gather more information.
I'll move the table.
Yeah,
All right, great, I'll second.
okay. We got a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
We don't have to vote on that.
We
So
don't
it's been
have to
seconded.
Vote on that, so. Just making sure we had anything, so. Any other information that you would need?
This is very useful, and I'll go ahead. I have some notes here, and I'll proceed and
Right.
take some action to research more information, bring it back for a future meeting for discussion. Thank you.
And I would just add, maybe, yeah, there's not a need or a demand for this now, but we should, at least I would, I'll let the solicitor determine that, for a legal standpoint, is this something that we would need to have ready should that time come? So just kind of being proactive.
And can I just give a shout out to CNET for being so ready to just
Yeah.
step forward and help with this situation? That's just, again, amazing for CNET. So grateful for them.
Yes, and we definitely thank them for their hard work on that. Give me a second. So seeing no further discussion on the CNET proposal, we will move on to the application for consideration of a modification waiver. I see we have Jenna Wargo on this, our planning and zoning director, but I believe the community planner takes this from here.
Yeah, our planning and zoning director is no longer with us on staff, so I am here to fill in momentarily until we find a new one. All right, on November 29th, 2023, Harmony at State College submitted a request for the consideration of a modification waiver from Chapter 22, Section 5C01.1.b, required parking. Harmony at State College is located at 121 Havershire Boulevard. The property is located in the traditional town development zoning district. The applicant is requesting a reduction in 2 required parking spaces for a total of 82 spaces at their senior living facility. There are 84 parking spaces currently that were required at the time of the approved land development plan. Included in the application is a daily parking count. These counts were taken over the course of 10 days at various times, showing that there is parking spaces in excess. So this reduction would allow for the use of a storage shed to be placed within 2 parking spaces. There are currently 93 residents out of 112 rooms that are available on site. There are 5 resident vehicles on site and 23 employee vehicles at peak business hours. The Planning Commission reviewed the application at their December 11th, 2023 regular meeting and recommended approval to the Board of Supervisors pending the occupancy data provided above.
All right.
Any questions?
Yes, any questions? Not?
No,
Didn't see
thank
the
you.
study in here. Is that study? in here?
There should be
There should be a
an
recommended motion.
attachment in the
I may
agenda.
have missed it.
it's just.
Oh,
Have the numbers listed.
okay, got it.
Yep, found it there. Oh, yeah, the parking counts. I was impressed. There was even a parking count on Thanksgiving Day of like 51 cars.
There
So
it is. That's the big one.
that is very valuable data to have.
It's a peak, go see your loved one day.
Yeah.
Yes, holidays especially. If nobody has anything further to add, I would entertain a motion.
This is Matt. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors grant the modification waiver from 22-5C01.1.b, required parking for Harmony at State College.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, we had a motion by Mr. Heller, seconded by Ms. Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have a Salvation Baptist Church final land development plan. Madam Community Planner.
Thank you. On November 30th, 2023, Lichty Engineering submitted on behalf of their client, the Salvation Baptist Church final land development plan. Salvation Baptist Church was formerly known as the Russian Church of Christ. It is located at 3645 West College Avenue. The parcel is approximately 60 acres and zoned rural agricultural. It is also in the corridor overlay zoning district. This land development plan proposes a fellowship hall and a garage totaling 13,626 square feet. The Salvation Baptist Church preliminary land development plan was approved by the board on November 1st, 2022. Planning Commission and staff have reviewed the final land development plan and is recommending conditional approval subject to the conditions described in the Community Planner's memo dated December 6th, 2023. I'll just note that most of those conditions are administrative in nature.
All right. Any board members? Questions, comments?
I do.
Ms. Stevens is recognized.
I have one, thank you. And it's more just a question about, one of the recommendations in there was from the arborist, about one of the trees, that even though it's on our list of approved native trees or something, this one is susceptible, boy, that was a hard word, susceptible to a blight. So is that something that the tree commission might need to look at, to asterisk, or how does that work?
Dave, might you answer that more?
They can certainly look at it. Is this the one that's a modification that's being requested?
No, this is the Salvation Baptist Church.
Yeah, no, just the arborist had recommended.
Oh, this is the land development review
Yeah.
part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, typically, by the time the arborist provides his review memo, there's a subcommittee of the tree commission that takes a look at it. There's usually 2 members that serve on that. And then that next tree commission meeting, it's kind of a consent agenda where the arborist reports out what comments he made. But what in particular was the question? Maybe I missed.
Well, is it just something that, since it's, he was recommending that they not plant it, the tree that was listed, because it's prone to disease? So if it's prone to disease, I realize it might be a native species, but should we be asterisking that somehow on our tree list?
That's something that can go forward to the tree commission. Maybe this disease is something new. I'm not
Yeah, it just.
familiar with.
It just struck
yeah.
me that if it's not recommended, maybe, we should asterisk it on our list or something.
So the current tree list is being reviewed.
Oh, perfect.
So it'll probably be addressed in that update. For this particular case, if it's a tree that's currently allowed, he's making a recommendation
Okay.
that hopefully the developer will follow, but maybe doesn't necessarily have to if it's on the currently approved list.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no further discussion, entertain a motion in the agenda packet.
Zamari, so moved.
And
this
do
is-
we have a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, motion by Mr. Patterson, seconded by Ms. Stevens. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. All right. Next up, discussion and review of vacating a small strip of right-of-way of Science Park Road to adjoining tax parcel 24421Y. The Public Works Director is recognized.
Thank you. So staff was approached by a local design firm on behalf of the property owner that owns property on the west side of Science Park Road, the tax parcel that you just mentioned. It's the name of TRI SCI Associates LLP. I have a sketch attached. If it helps, we can bring it up on the screen. If not, it's in your packet. The strip of land that we're talking about, if you were on Science Park Road at the intersection of Pine Hall and heading north, if you look to the left, you may recall there's a white jersey barrier and some embankment that kind of goes up and rises to your left. So this strip of land is at the top of that embankment. The property owner is working with Pantera on a land development plan for that parcel and approached the township engineer to see what the possibility would be of vacating a strip along the top of that embankment. I believe it would help the developer with their requirements to meet open space, impervious area, and building setbacks. So I reviewed the matter with the township solicitor, the township engineer, the township manager, and we thought it best to bring it in front of the board here, at least for your information at this point, see if you have any questions. The matter of compensation was discussed, and when this right-of-way was acquired, it was done through the long-range transportation plan, the LRTP, and PennDOT had taken the lead on making improvements at the intersection of West College Avenue and Science Park Road. For those that have been here a long time, you might remember when that intersection was configured differently, and now you see the way it's configured now. When that was done, PennDOT acquired all the necessary right-of-way for SR 26 and for Science Park Road, as it was necessary to realign Science Park Road in that area. So there were no township funds utilized to purchase the right-of-way. We looked into that to see if we were going to vacate, should we consider asking the property owner to compensate. Typically, and it hasn't happened a lot, I can remember at least 2 occasions where we've vacated right-of-way, and we actually vacated a section of Science Park Road that was no longer in use after this realignment was done. And in that case, it gets vacated back to the adjoining property owners. In this case, there is only one adjoining property owner. There's not a property owner on each side. Should the board be agreeable to the vacation, all work and costs needed to complete the vacation would be the responsibility of the developer, including any staff billable time, solicitor review time, legal notices, document prep, document recording fees. The board's being asked at this time to consider this or ask any questions. The reason being the developer is going to proceed with a land development plan, and the way they situate their building may be impacted by whether or not the vacation is agreed upon in the future. So at least at this point, we could see if there's any questions that the board has. And I don't know if there's any representatives attending. I see Mark Toretti, if you had any questions, but certainly I'm here if you have questions.
Any questions from the board?
Sure. Bye. What's the value of that land?
I don't know.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, to find out the value of the land, we do have a appointed appraiser, Chris Allmiller, and I'd probably get in contact with him. Land value changes year from year, and then it depends on how it's zoned. So residential land, I might have a little better idea because we acquired, some recently for right-of-way and drainage easements in Park Hills. But this would be probably commercially zoned land, so I'd need to look into it. Yeah. The other consideration, Mr. Patterson and others on the board, is, right now it's right away. If we wanted to, we could encumber that with a slope easement. So instead of right away, we would still have a slope easement, which is like a grading easement. And oftentimes, depending on the appraiser, the slope easements can be valued at 90% of the right of way. So that, by doing so, would encumber our rights to use it as slope embankment for the highway, even though currently we don't use it or mow it. The property owner takes care of it. But we would maintain that right. And then if there was a valuation, it would be more like 10% of the right-of-way take value in terms of what the land would be worth. Because when the township acquires a slope easement, if we're using Chris Allmiller, it's typically 90% of the right-of-way value. Other appraisers I've seen maybe as low as 50%, so somewhere in that 50 to 90 value. So I guess what I'm saying is if that was a concern and we encumbered it with the slope easement, then the value of the land is more like 10% of the value.
I was actually thinking about maybe the reverse insofar as at least maybe kind of preliminary recommendation is give it away.
Right.
Vice, someone's actually going to do something with this that's going to make some money. So that land is worth something to someone, and so wait a minute, should the township do this for nothing, or should there be some sort of shared prosperity between this land the township owns, Vice, kind of some sort of sale?
Sure.
And I recognize that they're going to say all legal fees and such taken care of, but that's how I was thinking about it.
That
Just from a commercial transaction perspective.
Yeah, that is a possibility, what you are asking. I don't know what the value is, but if the township was interested in, asking for a fair value, that's something that could be considered.
And that's why it's being brought to the board this evening, because ultimately we don't want to have the developer bring to you a land development plan, and then you make the decision that you actually would like to have it appraised and then sold. So this is the conversation. I think the board's asking the right questions to make a determination as to how you would like to proceed. Ultimately, it's your final decision.
Yep, I will just note, I did see we did have a hand raised online. We'll get to that in a moment, following board discussion. Mr. Heller is recognized.
A couple different things. One, I'd like to know a little bit more about what the development plan looks like before either giving away, and I'll just use the term giving away, even though of course it's not giving away, what that looks like. But I'm also more curious, we have a housing issue here in the township, right? We talk a lot about workforce housing and everything, and I see a property like this, and I think, well, if the township owns it, and if it's zoned maybe commercial now, what else could be done with this if the township were to change zoning on it now that we own it, and maybe consider developing it another way, not for commercial properties? Which raises the next question of how many other properties do we have like this that we might be able to consider that are within our purview, which is, again, a larger question for a conversation. But back to the original, the meeting for this evening, I would be in favor of holding on to it until we understood a little bit more about the development plan, or until we had further discussion about what else could be done with the small piece of property, even though, like I said, it is small.
Yeah, I can't answer the question about the development plans because I don't know.
Yeah.
But the sliver, what can we do with it? It's 10 foot wide. on one end and 39 feet on the other, about 6,500 square feet, about 340 feet in length. And it's slope embankment on the side of the roadway. So that's what we can do with it, is continue to use it as slope embankment on the side of the roadway.
But I'm also reminded of the property that's right along Blue Course that was built up recently by Havishire? And I thought, you can't put anything in there. And the next thing you know, you turn around and there's a building going up in that small spot. It was stick construction, and I don't know what's being used for. But again, sometimes I am surprised at what we can squeeze into small places if we look at this maybe a different way. So I think for tonight's discussion, I would be a fan of just kind of tabling the discussion or holding on to the property for until we know a little bit more.
Any other remarks from the board? I was going to say, Ms. Strickland, did you have anything?
Not at this time. I was interested to hear if we had some public comment.
Yeah, and we could go to that. I see Mr. Toretti has his hand raised.
Yes, good evening there, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, a couple items here. Yeah, that area of land, area right away, that is partially on the slope, but it is really more on the top of that slope along Science Park Road. As Dave said, you have Science Park Road, you have a sidewalk along there, then you have a Jersey barrier that's about 30 inches high, and then it slopes up at like a 2-to-1 slope for about 5 to 7 or 8 feet. And what we did is we just carried the right-of-way line straight from what was further up and brought through. And the area is primarily on top of the slope. There is a small, most of the area lands up there. That's really more of why, from our client's perspective, that it's something that it would be usable for his property, and at the same time, it really can't be developed, by any way at all. Trying to access it, you're probably going to be going up around 10 or 15 feet and about 10 or 15, maybe 20 feet, if, trying to look at developing it any way possible. But Klein was looking at doing a climate-controlled self-storage facility on that property. That's, I can, inform you on that part of it, and that's his goal. And since it really, it really isn't on the slope, it, really right not along the road, it's up on top of the slope. There's actually some, I think that area may have some shrubs, some sumac or some other stuff growing up in that area now that's, I think, for the township is hard to maintain. And like Dave, like the Public Works Director said, is just getting this in front of you to see about the township's interest, if they are interested in vacating this. Other than that, it really, the township can't do much of anything else with it. And we just want to check on your interest with this land. And
Thank you. Any further board discussion or questions?
I did just want to ask really quickly, so that is all IRD, that area?
I
can confirm that it is.
I will
Oh, yeah.
say from looking at Google imagery, it appears there's been a sign on the property since 2012 that does say 2-acre property zoned IRD. It's a little bit faded today, but it's still there.
And Kristen just confirmed it.
And Kristen
It is
confirmed
IRD.
that.
If, just continuing the conversation, if I compare it, and again, I pulled up Google just to confirm what I thought. It's Harmony at State College That was the property I was referencing in Blue
okay.
Course, which we had actually just talked about in the previous matter here before the board. That again is on a similar smaller property, etc. So again, I'm just curious of what else we might be able to consider for that property, if anything.
Or, I guess is allowed in IRD.
Does not look like there was any action to take other than we're just receiving the presentation, so don't think we need any motion for that. You know, if everyone's good, we can move forward.
I mean, can we just close out to say that are we open, right? Is the board open to hearing some sort of shared kind of interest here where we got a piece of land doing nothing and we got somebody that actually might do something with it to some extent, and so, you know, really continuing to let Mr. Modriger kind of have those discussions, that dialogue around, you know, kind of what can be brought to bear there, like a piece of naked land. Skinny.
It's unique.
Right, 10 feet wide.
It's currently part of the township's road right-of-way, as we have road right-of-ways all over through the township, right? So I'm bringing this to your attention so that in the event that there is some transaction in the future, from the Public Works Director's standpoint, we don't need to necessarily preserve it for use for the highway, is my point.
Makes sense, okay.
So you have options.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I would look to I would say to the board that if this is something that you would like to have more information for a future discussion, then I would, you know, direct staff to identify what questions you would like answers to. Otherwise, it's at this point, as Mr. Tretti has mentioned, there is interest in wanting to pursue a land development plan submission with interest in absorbing this property. So we don't necessarily need action unless if the board would like to continue conversation and is requesting additional information, at which point Mr. Modriger and I can take your questions and try to get answers back for a future discussion.
If I may, I guess I have so many questions because I've walked that property before. I work right next to it, so it's convenient to walk the old Science Park Road down to maybe the orthodontist that's in that building. Anyway, and it just seems a lot wider than 39 feet in many places, so I'm just not sure why, you know, I see 39 feet there, but I also see then the other rendering that identifies the property to be what I would think is much wider than 39 feet. So what am I missing?
Yeah, are you referring to the old Science Park Road right-of-way?
Yes.
That has already been vacated. So we don't own that anymore. That was vacated back to the property owners. I think it was Tom Songer on one side and Rochot or whoever owns it on the other side. That was done many years ago.
I'm sorry, maybe not. I'm talking about the blue that we were shown in the,
You can pull it up, James. Can you pull up what's in the agenda packet?
That's the parcel, that's the existing parcel there, that's referenced in the narrative.
so this is the one that would be vacated.
So the-
If in your packet,
There's a sketch and
science-
there's a picture of
Right.
the parcel.
Yeah.
There's two images.
Of the same parcel.
No, the
Oh.
one that's highlighted is the parcel that's called out, the actual parcel that is called out in the narrative and in the drawing. The sliver is the piece of land in front of that.
The attachment,
The red hash.
that's the
is then-
attachment that I added, that I've been referring to. I'm sorry, I didn't know there was another attachment.
Okay, that explains, that, thank you. So
Sorry
the
about
red
that.
hash is the one that is called into question.
Yes, sir.
Not the blue that is on the next part of it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that does change kind of my approach. I apologize now.
Oh, so do I.
Okay.
I was looking at the
Oh.
drawing with the red hatch.
I think we're pulling, James is going to pull up the,
So,
Now I see it.
okay.
Okay.
So let me describe it again. If you're on Science Park Road at Pine Hall Road and you go north, there's a concrete Jersey barrier. And above that Jersey barrier, on the top of the slope, there's a sliver of land that we own that's about 10 foot wide on one end and about 39 feet wide on the other and about 341 feet long. That's the sliver we're talking about. And that's why I was,
Yeah.
so I see where our disconnect was.
Exactly, and I wasn't making the connection that that was a sliver next to that blue one in the next image. I was like, oh wait, these just don't look the same. But now this makes perfect sense. And you can't do nothing with 39 feet and by 10. So, okay. I guess again, for future conversation and discussion is where we're landing for me.
Yeah, it looks like they're working on getting up on the screen. Just going to take a moment to recognize Ms. Strickland, and then maybe go back to Mr. Toretti if it looked like he might have had something further to add. Madam Strickland, you're recognized.
Thanks. You may not need my comments after that clarification, but I was just going to, I think maybe just suggest some steps forward. I think one concern I had in the discussion of any kind of rezoning is if that is all IRD, I'd be concerned about any spot zoning there. And then if there was some consensus on looking at an appraisal, I'd wonder what the cost of that would be, but if that was in the interest of the board members, I'd be supportive of that. And then I just wanted to comment, so there is no development plan currently submitted, that's right?
That's correct.
So even if they told us what they intended, it wouldn't necessarily be that then. So that's, you kind of have to make a decision without seeing something in this case.
So in that drawing, you may be able to see the Jersey barrier. It's that long, I don't have a pointer, but it's a double line adjacent to the Science Park Road, above the red hatching. So above the red hatching is, there's embankment, the Jersey barrier, sidewalk, and then the roadway.
Yeah. No, I'm got it now. Yeah. Once those two drawings were clarified, I'm like, oh, now I see it.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. Even I was the same way. Anything further?
Thank you.
I was gonna say, did we answer everything staff needed from us?
Dave, do you have any questions?
I think what happens now is the developer is going to proceed with whatever they think is in their best interest. And if they do want to, further acquire or have that land vacated, they'll need to have further discussions with us, and we'll bring that back to you. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, I think as they put together their budget, as part of like all the legal costs and such, that they say, oh, well, here's an additional $20 for that that parcel, right? I mean, I'm sure it's small and insignificant, but and maybe vacate is the right thing to do. I'm just tossing it out there as
Yeah.
an option.
Okay. Before I move on, I'll just recognize Mr. Toretti again, in case he has anything further.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you kind of broke up there, Dave broke up there a little bit, and I guess what we were trying to get a read on is, is the board interested in pursuing this with my client, and, want more information on pursuing it, or are they interested in just leaving it as is? That's kind of, I wasn't sure what your answer was on that. That's kind of where we was trying to figure out. We can move forward without that parcel, but it's an area that we thought is unusable to the township, and we want to approach the township on it if needed. But I didn't get your exact summary of that, Dave, on what the board's going to do.
Would you like me to repeat what I said?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Mr. Toretti, the board was not asked to make a decision tonight. So they've given some consideration and provided some feedback. At this stage, you and the developer need to proceed as you see fit. And if we're going to have any further discussions about land value, you can contact me.
Okay.
Right? Think we're good?
I'm curious, Mr. Treddy smiling or frowning right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Keep your hand down here. The lower hand.
May I ask you a question? May I ask you, Mr. Treddy?
Sure.
No? Okay. Mr. Treddy, I mean, is that amenable for you? I mean, is that a thing that, you know, the board's not saying no? And so, you know, as you go, okay.
If you want to come, if you want us to show, bring you a sketch plan to show you what we're looking at, if that'd be helpful, we can do that also on there, because it does affect our design one way or another. And, you know, as far as doing that layout, and if they are interested, but they want to see more information and have it, want us to show what our layout is on there, that would be interested, you know, something. And even if you're looking at what the land value is, I can discuss that too with my client on what his initial thoughts are on that. They're just, I was hoping for a little more direction if you are, like I said, if you are interested in, but you want some more information, or they really aren't interested, you know, one way or another, so.
I will tell you from my experience, if this land allows you to eke out 3 more spaces at $500 a month, that the township should be able to participate in that value that you know, that's going to be able to be delivered, right? So that piece of land is worth, right, 3 more spaces. And so, you know, so that's my lens, and I'm not speaking for the board, you know, just that's my lens. But it's worth it to you and your client to do that, to say, hey, can I get this 6,000 square feet? Because it's going to eke out an additional X amount of dollars over the next 20 years. I mean, there's good value in that. And I think we as an organization, you know, all want good working businesses and to grow business here in the township. I don't think there's anybody that's going to go, no, we don't want another great business here. So, you know, that's my note.
Yeah, and I'd like to, if there's something too that you want to bring forward, that would be great too. For me, I'm just thinking more from a pervious and impervious kind of thing is just, I don't want to, yeah. So I appreciate that if you would put something together and bring it forward, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, all great discussion. I will also say we do have a very interactive planning commission that likes seeing plans.
Yes.
Well, I'm not speaking for everyone. I think there seems to be a consensus, at least in this body, of seeing something in the future. So,
Okay.
thank you, everyone.
Okay, that was a little bit more helpful, so.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Okay, you too.
Next, we have the discussion on the appointment of representatives on local and regional authorities, boards, and commissions policy. The manager is recognized.
Thank you. In 2017, the Board of Supervisors adopted Resolution 2017-20 to establish the first time ever policy for the appointment of representatives on local and regional authorities, boards, and commissions. Prior to enacting this policy in 2017, the board had different strategies and different approaches that they would exercise depending on the specific authorities, boards, and commission appointment. Through the adoption of the resolution 2017-20, the board standardized the process with a uniform policy on ABC appointments to allow for fair consideration of all applicants, ensure equal access to information by individual board members, and to help establish an objective process by which the most qualified applicant may be selected. Staff's position is that the purpose of the policy remains a priority in terms of standardizing and creating equal access and opportunity for residents of Ferguson Township to participate on an ABC. the board's encouraged to discuss the timeline stated in the policy, as well as consider that a special meeting shall be held to interview applicants rather than a work session. We've now had this policy in place for 5 years, and I believe that there are a few of you that have participated either on the other side, right, in terms of applying and being interviewed by the board as a considered applicant, but board members here have also interviewed to determine the which applicant would be appointed to serve on the Ferguson Township's ABC. So at this point in time, the board can certainly deliberate and discuss and take action to direct me as the manager to prepare a proposed amendment. Alternatively, the board can also just have the discussion to see what, if any, action you may want to take after experiencing how the standardization uniform approach has worked.
All right. Open the, for board discussion here.
Yeah, my only comments, having been on both sides of this, is it's one of those scenarios where I really like the chessboard analogy. It'd be great to see in the policies or procedures that, there was a chessboard. When this person's appointment is over, this then happens. So maybe a visual representation that could also be included along with everything. I don't know how that would be incorporated, but that would just be something that would be advantageous, I think, to helping communicate what's available, what's open, and when those slots are, up for grabs. That's all. Just a comment, really.
Any other feedback?
I'll also acknowledge too, which is not stated in the narrative, that, Ferguson Township did move toward having the entire board meet to interview the applications, or excuse me, the applicants. And I've seen that our neighboring municipalities all have a different methodology, a different process. For example, it's my understanding that one of our neighboring municipalities will interview their ABC applicants as part of their regular meeting as an agenda item, and they'll take 5 or 10 minutes and they'll just go through those interviews as part of a regular meeting. It's my understanding that another neighboring municipality will designate 2 board members to serve on a subcommittee comprised of those 2 board members as well as staff members to interview the applicants. And I would say that from a staff's position in terms of managing the legal advertisement as well as trying to coordinate times that work for all 5 board members to convene to hold a special meeting to interview those ABC applicants. As you may recall, I think we held a total of 3 special meetings to interview the ABC applicants for appointments in 2024, which staff we're capable and will continue to do so, but the board, it's my understanding that sometimes time schedule conflicts make it difficult to participate, and so the board may consider, as part of amendment to the resolution 2017-20, may also be consideration to a different methodology that might create less of a strain on time.
Right. Sometimes those doodle polls were interesting.
Yes, the second and third round of them.
Great, yeah.
We'll get to you in a moment. I just going to ask if there was any other questions within the room. Otherwise, we'll recognize Ms. Strickland, and then we'll go to public comment with Mr. Keough.
Thanks, I just wanted to, I do think that the language in the ordinance does need cleaned up so that it's very specific. And also wanted to share, I was interviewed for the planning commission prior to the policy, and was interviewed by what may have been a subcommittee, but it was 2 members of the board. So I'd be supportive of looking at that too, if that seems to be maybe more practical for staff and board members, particularly if it's not a part of an end of year large number of reappointments and appointments. So if somebody were to quit mid-year, so that may be a more practical solution to that. But I am in favor of at least looking and cleaning up the policy.
Thank you. move to a public comment from Mr. Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill Keough, Township resident. 2 comments with regard to this, and I've been on both sides of this issue. I was a supervisor before we had the current policy, and I've been on both Planning Commission and Park Authority and gone through the interview process. Just personal feedback to you all. With regard to reappointment of individuals who have served so far and have made themselves available for reappointment to a particular committee, I've got to tell you, it's been very painful for me. I was not reappointed to the authority, given no feedback with regard to why, and for the last few weeks, very unsettled as to what was going to happen. And in fact, in my particular case, it was a county, or it was a regional appointment, and it affected more than just the township. And so I think you've got to look at the practice and the policy with regard to reappointing individuals who have been serving and have not violated any of the serving rules, as opposed to just, I guess I'm dismissed. That's very painful. That's very painful to the citizens who have been serving this township in a variety of capacities, to have that process happen to them. The second thing that I want to mention is in the interviewing process, is there a set of rules that you have to follow with regard to the questions and discussion you have with each candidate? In other words, it appears to me that we're following the rules of interviewing applicants for a job. You have to ask every applicant the same thing and all of those other things. And each of your applicants is liable to bring a whole different kind of set of skills forward. The opportunity to discuss that with them in your deliberation, I think, is important. But if somebody doesn't have a particular skill and somebody has a particular skill, how do you get to that kind of discussion if you ask canned questions of everybody exactly the same? And I'm not aware that the rules of hiring employees necessarily is immediately applicable to every appointment that you would make. Now, your solicitor probably will have some kind of weigh-in on that, but I don't think we have to follow those rules. I may be wrong there. Only 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further board discussion?
No, I just in sort of response to one of the 2 things that Bill had said, I sort of think that when a term expires, there's an expectation that it would be opened up. I mean, even if you had been in that position, I don't think the expectation at the end of a term should be that you just roll into it. I think that it's just participation and getting more people involved. I think at the end of a term of an appointment, that it should be open and advertised. So that's just my feeling.
And I heard in that it's in addition to kind of make the decision, there's the feedback on the decision, and so
Yeah,
maybe
the
the
feedback,
policy,
right.
should have some sort of written communique to every applicant, or
Yeah.
and maybe we do that. I can't remember. um, with that type of feedback. And yeah, so I agree with Ms. Strickland from earlier, and maybe this is something else that can be looked at. if we
Right,
want.
I think our communication can be a little more robust than,
Yeah. Anything else? I would say that I am in favor of taking another look at the policy now. Of course, as somebody with a background in human resources, I definitely tap into a lot of that knowledge with this, but understanding that this isn't, we're not necessarily hiring corporate executives or brain surgeons here. I think there can be a little bit more flexibility, at least in a way that we can encourage resident participation, but also make them feel comfortable in the process and get to know them well. For the purposes of equality, yes, we should be asking all the same interview questions, but understanding that we are looking at different committees, I don't see any issue with tailoring questions based on the committee that person so desires to be on. Obviously, you're not gonna ask a person what experience they have in welding when you're hiring them for cooking, so yeah, definitely a lot of great points and areas to look at were brought up, and like to pursue that, and maybe even considering what language we already have in the policy when it comes to incumbents. It doesn't seem like we're necessarily guaranteeing that they will continue to have a seat, but we will take a look at all interested parties and make a decision from there. So, no further discussion. We do have a recommended motion.
There is a recommended motion, but I also wanted to just remind the board from my earlier comment that other municipalities do it a little differently. And so in terms of methodology to prepare the amendment, I'm happy to take the feedback that I've heard this evening and prepare an amendment as noted as a recommended motion for the board's consideration. And maybe even just having that amendment might allow for further continuation of what you might want as your ABC appointment policy. There's also the option, if the board would like to designate 2 members of the board to as a subcommittee, to meet maybe 1 or 2 times to draft the amendment policy. And that way, individual board members, 2, no more than 2, because 3 would be a quorum and we would need to advertise. But so I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that while there is a recommended motion, you have 2 options. I'm indifferent. If you want me to draft that, I'm happy to do that. But if you would like, prior to the draft of an amendment, to have a meeting with 2 board members and staff, just to have some further discussion, that can happen as well.
Gonna say get a feel of the room. I would be in favor of participating with the manager and whatever. I think maybe for purposes of efficiency and staff time, maybe instead of just drafting something up, sounds like maybe we might want to take a look at a couple municipalities, maybe have a couple meetings, and then come back for further board discussion before necessarily going down the road of drafting a document. Sure, it helps to only draft a document once or twice instead of 50 times before it's amended. I think I've done a couple of those before, zoning and Sato. Any other feedback? I'm willing to entertain whatever motion you folks would like to bring forward.
I like the idea of going ahead and having the discussion, Mr. Thompson, with a township manager, et cetera, and one more just to go ahead and come up with that draft amendment.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
It doesn't have to just be me if there's
No, I think-
other 2 parties on this board that want to meet with the manager.
I think you being one of them is good. Lisa, if you wanted to do it, I would defer to you, but otherwise I'm happy to as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to, whatever you want to do, Patty, I think, I think it's helpful to, have been through that we've all interviewed, so we've all been through that process. So I'm happy to meet and discuss that. Obviously we'll all have a chance for feedback after, when it comes back, so.
All right, sounds like Lisa and
This is
Jeremy.
Omari. I move for Mr. Thompson and Ms. Stevens to meet with the township manager, or should it be Ms. Strickland?
Ms. Strickland.
Sorry, Mr. Thompson and Ms. Strickland to meet with the township manager to draft modifications to the let's see, this resolution number 2017-20.
All right. This is Patty. I will second that.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Patterson, seconded by Ms. Stevens. That was very kind of you, Mr. Patterson. Yeah, I guess this would not be a roll call because we don't necessarily have an official policy yet, but all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. All right. Next up, we have a discussion to an amendment of the township's financial procedures. The township manager is recognized.
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a narrative identifying the financial procedures as the municipal charter, section 706, the budget hearing, and it's quoted there as part of the agenda narrative, and I'll go ahead and recite. No, not later than the 1st of December, the manager shall arrange for publication in a newspaper of general circulation within the township a notice of the time and place of a public hearing on the budget and capital program. The public hearing will take place between the 3rd and the 15th of December at a time and place designated by the board. Copies of the proposed budget shall be available at the township office for public inspection at least 5 days prior to the public hearing. The availability of copies of the budget shall be noted in the newspaper advertising the public hearing. And this evening, for this particular section, 706 budget hearing, the board is asked to consider an amendment that would allow the public hearing to take place between the second meeting in November and the 15th of December, not requiring any particular day, but just to increase that flexibility. Additionally, in accordance with the financial procedures, section 711, independent audit, the board, and I'll go ahead and just read the expert of the municipal code, or excuse me, the municipal charter. The board shall provide for an independent annual audit of all township revenues and accounts by a certified public accountant or firm of certified public accountants. The board may provide for more frequent audits as well as special audits as it deems necessary. The results of an annual audit and a financial statement of the fiscal affairs of the township shall be presented to the board and published in a newspaper circulating generally in the township by April 15th of the year following the fiscal year audited. And this evening, the board is asked to consider an amendment that the deadline for the annual audit and financial statement of the fiscal affairs of the township to the end of June. Since the last amendment to this provision dated 1979, there has been increased auditing requirements with an increase to the volume of work related to the fiscal affairs of the township. Staff also conducted a review of the independent audits that have been done in since 2012. And while the presentation to the board, a preliminary presentation of the independent audit, has generally taken place in April or May, the actual independent audit wasn't concluded until June. And so while the board is asked this evening to give consideration to an amendment to the charter, I just want to note that there are other alternative options, but understanding that the township staff does receive inquiries and questions and comments about why the township's not meeting the deadlines as identified in the municipal charter. At times it does bring a bit of concern, and we just want to make sure that we're obviously acting in compliance with our own municipal code. Understanding though, however, that, for example, an independent audit can take quite a bit of time, and while in 2023, for the audit in the 2022 audit, certainly was delayed and was not presented to the board until October. Those were extraordinary circumstances that we certainly do not anticipate to have again this year. It was certainly a result of the turnover in our finance department, and just generally what was described to us from Baker Tilly, just a lack of, I don't know if there were an increased number of retirements that happened in the accountant industry, but there was just a significant delay. We certainly do not anticipate that it'll take till October, but we give some consideration to wanting to perform at our best for the Board of Supervisors and making sure that we're doing our best to meet the deadline as prescribed in our charter, but also recognize that April 15th may be a challenge. Other considerations, if the board is not interested in taking action to amend the charter, might simply be that the board consider an alternative deadline and just acknowledge publicly that the board is giving consideration for an extended period, I would say on an annual basis, until action was taken to revise the municipal charter. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And if the board would like to explore and discuss, I certainly can come back to the board with a specific outline of steps that would need to be taken. But just a preliminary discussion is all that the board is asked to do this evening. If the board would be.
Mr. Patterson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Come on.
The last 10 years, there was this kind of when the report was done versus when the meeting occurred and was presented. I think I read in the ordinance that you need to present the kind of statement of fiscal, I forget what the word was, fiscal readiness or state of fiscal affairs, I think is what it said. How are they able to do that in May when the report wasn't done until June? Did they have some sort of preliminary? I'm just curious, like, is that normal and okay? Or was there a little bit of, well, we're going to have the meeting just because the policy, because the charter says it, but we're not going to do what the intent of what's supposed to happen in the charter occurs. Does that make sense?
I think I understand what you're saying. I can't speak to that specifically because not being the manager in the previous years, I can't really explain how and why. But what I will say is that there have been inquiries, a significant number of inquiries addressed directly to me and other staff, as well as I think perhaps the board last year on the delays. And because of that, it motivates me to want to bring this conversation for the board's consideration. In the previous years, when I served as assistant township manager, I don't ever recall receiving this level, the number of inquiries that we've had. And so I can't speak to that, right? And I don't want to be presumptuous and suggest that I can, I think it would be unfair for me to suggest, to provide answers to those questions without having any record to recite.
Copy. Let's go back 2 years.
Okay.
And same deal. It was presented in May, report came out in June. Was that the presentation, did it meet the intent of the charter? So maybe that's a question to be answered later, but it's a question I do
I will
have.
give that some thought. When I read the intent of when I read the charter, I think, when it says the results of the annual audit and a financial statement of the fiscal affairs of the township shall be presented to the board and published in a newspaper circulating generally in the township by April 15th, right? So if I hear you correctly, when it says the results of the annual audit, the intent of the ordinance, the results of the audit, one may interpret that as a final completion of an audit, but one could also acknowledge that the preliminary findings could be considered the result. And ultimately, I will stand behind and support the board's decision, of course, here on this. I recognize, however, that especially having, our new finance director, I want to position him for success. And so I want to be sure that whatever the intent of the ordinance is, that it is interpreted and stated by our current governing body. So whether that be that the board this evening acknowledge that, you want to take action to amend the charter, or that you're not quite ready to confirm that direction, but you acknowledge an alternative timeframe and will accept a later date for our finance director to bring Baker Tilly back for, a presentation of the findings of the audit for 2023. Does that make sense?
It does. And so if you can do me a favor and just maybe just look back 2 years, to when
Right.
you were actually here, right? And there's those dates, but then did it meet the intent? Because apparently we met the intent for 10 prior years. I get that this year was some sort of, there was a lot of things that happened that kind of affected this particular year. Got it. But it sounds like it looks like every other year there was an intent. We met the intent between when the meeting occurred and presentation occurred versus when the formal report came out. And so I would want to hold true to precedent. And the precedent is, at least from what I see, just what's before me right now, the precedent is you get the report after you have the meeting. And if that's the way we do things, that's okay. And I think we should continue in that way. No need to go, modify the charter. Let's just do what the precedent is, if it's the right thing to do. And so I definitely want to make sure our new finance director is set up for success. I would also say that if Baker Tilly's in a position right now where they have too much on their plate, we also need to investigate that. I mean, maybe this year is the only year this is going to happen. We'll be fine, but we should just investigate that. I think there's a couple of levers here we can pull. Number one being, based on what we've done the last 10 years, well, let's just stick with that, notwithstanding this year being a tough one. But also, are we still going to be okay with our current audit? Are they still okay to service us in the way that we need to be serviced? And have the meeting in April, deliver the report by June. That's all I got. Thank you.
Ms.
I-
Stevens is recognized.
Thank you. I would agree with what Omari is saying, and if staff is looking for the governing body to have a statement or something, I'm happy to do that. Because I do worry about staff time to go the other way with a referendum and et cetera. Again, I still feel like we're kind of still getting our feet underneath us with some staffing issues and things, and so I would feel like spreading thin. It feels like addressing this now when we can do another action that meets the needs, to say that we're willing to address this. And anyway, that's my feeling.
Mr. Heller.
If I may, again, echoing Mr. Patterson and Ms. Stevens here, I think looking back and saying what has worked for the township in the past and just putting it in black and white, making it as simple as possible that, again, doesn't hinder our new finance director, et cetera. But also, I think more expansively. So when we get the audit back, it almost seems, and this, I don't mean this to sound pejorative, but it seems like a check, we're checking the box. But what are we doing with the information? What other policies, procedures, information can we then go ahead and take the findings forward with and then make changes with? So again, I'm looking at this more holistically as this is the start to then enable us and empower us to make changes and find things that we could be doing better. So I'm less concerned about this, find the shoe that fits, and more concerned about what can we do with the information and how can we be a better township and fiscally responsible to the constituents within the township. That's where my mind is after this is received.
Ms. Strickland is recognized.
Thanks. Just a few thoughts. I really agree with all the comments that have previously been made, so I'll just briefly make mine. So I'll go back to the budget part of this item first and say, I think that I'm okay with those dates as they are right now, given that for this year, for instance, we've moved the special meetings going over the budget to October. The bulk of the work will be done prior to Thanksgiving, and this allows us time to have one or two, if needed, review meetings if we have substantial changes after staff comes back with all of our edits from the special meetings. pardon me, and then we can have the public hearing that first meeting in December. So while in the future it might make sense to change that date, I think this is workable right now because we've affected the intent of moving the bulk of that work away from the holidays. I know that my first year or two, November through December, were all COG budget meetings, and late November, I'll say, and township budget meetings. So it was really, really difficult to balance all of that in those few weeks. So I think where we're at right now is okay. So I would be supportive of leaving that as is and see how this schedule works for another year. On the audit, again, that was one of my first thoughts. As Omari said, let's investigate our auditing needs. So looking back at the history of the 10 years, that April 15th was established in 1979. Obviously, our situation, our needs, our involvement in grants has changed dramatically in that time. So that April 15th date may not really make sense anymore. That said, do we need to, because this chart is showing us back, 10, 11 years that we've never met that April 15th date, I think before any change is made, it does make sense to make sure we're in the right place. As far as dates, I'm supportive, just like Patty said, of having, whether it's a resolution or whatever the manager would prefer, to acknowledge that we're going to accept the audit after the April 15th date. I think, getting a preliminary look at audit results may be fine, but we do get financial reports fairly regularly, and now that we have a new finance director, I'd expect those to be coming, on a regular basis. So I think it makes sense to hold off on that meeting, acknowledge that with whatever, like I said, the manager would like. I do think it's important to have all of that, if we can, prior to any CIP meetings, and it looks like we should be bumping right up against that. So I think that may be just one consideration if the finance director would find that most useful in preparing for the CIP meeting. So that would be my only comment. But again, for this year, for the auditing portion, I'd be in favor of just acknowledging the board's agreement to receive the final audit later than the April 15th date.
A lot of good feedback there. Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of whatever we want to do. Understanding some of the challenges that have been faced in recent years. Yeah, I think it would be beneficial of us as a board to be able to publicly communicate if there is a delay, and at least give the public some assurance that we are aware of their fiscal concerns and those that are put on us as elected officials, and we are committed to seeing, a budget, the audit does seem to be helpful when you're communicating. Hopefully less questions to staff, but at least some public reassurance that there's nothing nefarious going on. Like this past year, there was staffing shortages, and I know it seemed like the whole industry, there was some staffing challenges. We even had to hire somebody from that field twice in the past year, and I even know of some small business owners where their tax preparer literally went out of business because they just couldn't get CPAs to even run that service anymore. So
Thank you. I think even just hearing the board discuss and hearing the feedback that all of you have shared, it's good to hear that the board is supportive in accepting a alternate date. And what I would like to propose is that We will consult with Baker Tilly and follow up with the board to propose a timeline for the 2024 fiscal year as to when we can bring the independent audit presentation and the report itself, and see if that's accepted by the Board of Supervisors as opposed to an amendment. Okay, thank you.
Did you need a motion or?
I don't. I think at this time, what we'll do is we'll bring back to the board a proposed alternate schedule, and then at a public meeting, the board will just, accept or propose alternate outcome.
Right. Nothing further. We will move on to communications to the board. For those that are newer, if you do get an email or you're in the grocery store and somebody wants to talk to you about the township, we take time to share during our meetings. Any communications, so. Mr. Heller.
I've had several communications concerning CATA and some issues with not only CATA Go, but shutting down services to local residents, which I believe will be addressed or at least brought forth here on January 16th at our next meeting with CATA representation. Besides that, I also had a conversation in front of our post office pertaining to stormwater fee. And, folks are getting some bills right now related to that. So it's on everybody's mind.
All right, I had a communication again about CATA and service reduction for the spring season. And then I also received an email regarding the process of minutes, how we take our minutes and things like that.
Ms. Strickland is recognized.
Thank you. I had a few. I also received that email on the minutes and the board procedures, and I'll respond to that on our behalf. I received also communication on concerns about CATA Go, and service on Bristol. So yeah, like Mr. Heller said, we'll be hopefully able to have that conversation. And then finally, I received some communication on trash at the Toll Brothers site again, that, and this was just within the past few weeks, that two people told me that it was excessive and trash lying around. So I guess this issue has resurfaced. I'm not sure it was ever corrected satisfactorily, but it's been raised to me by two different people.
Well, am I allowed to talk about things that are pre-swearing?
I guess. You were elected, you know.
Well, there's been a number of conversations about the north side of College Ave, where the former Minute Mart is.
Yep.
In, getting some density over there in that site, given that it's so close to campus, so close to the walking path, in College Heights in particular. So be mindful of that. Stormwater, obviously, and then heard the same on Catago, and just speaking to my experience there, that we need some better marketing. CATA needs to keep marketing, keep getting the word out on what that service is and what it does for individuals. It's particularly on the West End, where they're outside of the fixed routes.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is a neat service, and so we need to kind of keep marketing it. So I'll make that marketing play. Look up Catago. Give them a call. They'll walk you through it.
Yeah, I had received the same communication on board minutes. I was going to say I don't normally respond to other board communications, but since Lisa had mentioned about the trash at, I believe it was the Yards property, that was something that was brought to my attention through COG staff, as my as I was on the Climate Action Sustainability Committee last year, and my understanding was COG staff had been heavily in communication with that property. Thinking maybe if there is resident concerns, maybe just another reach out to COG staff and our staff and just kind of, how we want to, we'll just take it from there, so leave it at that. Calendar items. We have the Planning Commission organizational meeting next week, January 8th. Followed by the Parks and Recreation Committee organizational meeting on January 11th. The administration offices of the township will be closed for Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 15th. Tree Commission's organizational meeting will be January 16th. And the biggest and most exciting coffee and conversation of the year will be taking place at the Baileyville Community Hall on January 20th. Get there early because there will be a crowd. Zoning Hearing Board's organizational meeting will be on January 23rd. And then the Pine Grove Mills Small Area Plan Advisory Committee organizational meeting will be January 25th. And with that, I will move to entertain Patty's most favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.